we have this scene of Nativity with Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus with the Star of Bethlehem here. So we're just going to learn the basics of how to paint this and how to add a little bit of texture. So get your supplies ready and we'll get started. We have some colors that I've mixed out of my tropical set, and I made a little bit of a blue, green, and brown to make a muted color for Joseph's robe here. So I'm going to go ahead and start filling that in. I'm going to leave a little bit of the white of the paper, and I'll be very careful around baby Jesus here and the inside of that halo. And now I'll want to just spread some of that around. You can choose whatever color you want for this robe. You can even add, a little bit more blue in here if you've got too much of a green, which I felt like I did. So this is starting to set up a little bit because I took a break. And now I'm coming back at this. And you can see where it's kind of dried in those neat little spots right here. And that's the bottom of the manger, so you just want to watch what's what. And that's part of his robe. So I'll try to kind of combine those a little bit here. But I really like it to have all that texture so it looks more like cloth. So letting it kind of dry for a minute and then adding another layer will help you to get that. If you like that, you'll just need to stop for a moment, either work somewhere else and come back, or go take a break, get a glass of water, and then let it dry and come back. I kind of lost some of my color in there. All right, so I will put a little bit of brown, or you could make it match, but I'm going to put Mary's in across here. And I'm just picking a few things I can paint while I'm waiting for that to dry. This staff that he has here, I just picked a brown and I mixed it in this set with a little bit of coconut and a little bit of reef. I think I put a little bit of black because I have that add-on in there. And can make it look like wood by not maybe making it look so smooth. And I'm going to go ahead and do the legs on this manger. We always make it a wooden manger. Some say the manger was in stone because the barn would be more of a cave. I'm not really sure, but we're going to go with this kind of traditional look. And I have this piece of paper that should be included in your tank and paint that you can test out your colors. And I'm going to come in here and start filling this in. I'm going to leave a little bit of the white of the paper because I'd like it to have some texture. And make sure that's dry before you get too close to it. And now I'm tapping in a little bit of color where I already have that water. And now I've got kind of a different brown. It was used to make this, but it is a little bit different, so it goes well together, but it's going to add some additional texture by letting it mix on the paper like that. And when it gets a little bit more dry, I'll add some other things to it. I'm going to add a little bit of a black shadow kind of to the back of the legs on that manger, maybe a little here and here. I can do the same thing on his staff, either a darker brown, the same brown, just kind of making it look more textured. I'm going to wait to do Mary's robe because this is all wet. And now I'm going to do this headpiece here, which I made out of black and a little bit of blue, just to give it more of a silvery gray. That happens to have a lot of water in it, so you got to be careful that you don't get your hand in it. And you could decide how perfect you want this to be. I have a pretty small brush here, so you do want to have a small fine brush to fill in these spaces. And when you get down to the bottom here, we really want to be careful that we get the small end of our brush in there. And if you do get too much water, you can always siphon just by barely touching it. It won't make a pattern, but it will suck up some of that moisture. Otherwise, the water will evaporate and you'll be left with those pretty watercolor lines. So let's not forget the top here so it all makes sense. Just like so. And then let's go ahead and put a beard on Joseph. As long as you don't get into that gray we just did. So you might want to let that dry depending on how steady you think your hand is. Like so. And now I can take a little bit of darker brown and kind of tap in. It'll travel a little bit depending on how wet this paint was to begin with. If it's just kind of tacky wet, it's nice because it'll start to spread and make little patterns that will, like kind of down here, that'll look like texture. I think we're ready to do the halo here. So with a steady hand, I like to kind of pull toward myself, putting this bright yellow circle here. While I'm waiting for all of this to dry, I'm going to come up to my star, and you can make it a bright yellow coming out of that corner there, or there's kind of this, my brush is full of that paint, but more of a mustard yellow than kind of that bright yellow. So you can choose how you'd like your star to look. And while I'm waiting for this to dry, I'm going to make up like a little bit of a skin color. So I've got some of this, in this one, a coconut. You might have a tan in yours, or you can add a little bit of brown. Don't really want it to look yellow. So maybe that's a nice color, just the very faint brown in there, just to kind of make them look not like a sheet of paper. And go around his beard if that's still wet, be careful. And he's got his hand showing here. And let's just say Jesus was born bald. We'll do that. And I'm leaving his cloths to be white, and that yellow just kind of traveled into my brown, so that's okay with me because it goes with that. And now we have to do Mary's robe. I did her in purple, and I used out of this tropical set that reef, which is very bright purple. If you have the classic set, the purple is almost this color right here. So what I did is I mixed a little bit of sunset, which is kind of a pink color, and a little bit of brown to make it muted. So if you're using your own set at home, you can kind of play around with the pink versus purple and maybe add a tiny smidge of brown just to make it muted, so that, unless you want it really bright, but you would do both of the people bright, I would think, so that it would be more cohesive. Now I want this to look like it's in the background, so I'm going to go right up to that edge. And this has brown in it, so that's okay. Some of that sort of traveling there. Then we can decide to do a little bit of a ground here. I had this kind of color, sort of like maybe it's straw or dirt floor. And since I just painted that, you can see the purple starting to travel into this. So you can wait, or you can just let it bleed into it and look kind of nice. I think I just put the wrong color. Sometimes that's hard to remember. Now I'm going to go back behind Joseph, and I think I'll do the same thing to Mary. That way it looks like it's in the background as well. And you don't have to fill it all in, and you can use less water and kind of drag some of that forward, and it'll give it some different depth. You can also put a little bit of darker brown around this area where it may be shadowed if you want. You can always add a little bit of shadow with some gray once it's dry or tacky, and it'll stay in a better place. And for Mary, I'd like a little more color in here, and especially down here where it's sort of underneath. This is adorable. You can put it in a frame and bring it out each year. You can paint this and put it into an envelope 5x7 and mail it to someone with a nice message. So you can also paint the background with like a night sky if you would like. You would just use a wet in the background, go carefully around the outside, and then add in some color, maybe a little bit of purple and gray, a little bit of blue to make it muted and moody, but not completely black. That would look really nice. So enjoy being creative.